Hello, and welcome to another thrilling episode of Between Two Lights, where we talk about the mundane yet important aspects of video production. Today, we're going to be updating the firmware on our Canon cameras. Let's get into it.
3, 2, 1.
Here we go!
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the M1 Gear channel. Today we're going to update the firmware of the C200 Mark I. It's a little out of date. I gotta say, it's actually painfully out of date. And so we're probably gonna need to step it up. So we'll run through the firmware process a couple of times, show you how to do that for the C200. So what we're going to do first is back up the settings of this camera. If you've been using your camera for a little while and you like to customize it like we do, such as programming of the buttons or maybe some color profiles, then you might want to save your settings, because when you do a firmware update, it's going to wipe its memory out. So you go into the menu and then you come over here to the wrench, and then there's this setting here that says transfer menu, and you go into it, and I'm going to save. And you have to have a card on the C200 here. You have to have a card in slot B. This will be grayed out if it's not there, or if it's, if I have one in A, it's just grayed out, right? So it has to be in B. Go to B, overwrite the save data, say yes, and success. That's all there is to it to save this. Now I'll make sure I set this card aside, because we're gonna want to not delete those files, right? It has all my custom button settings. So now that we've saved our settings, let's see what firmware version we're running on here. So we go into the menu and we go over to the wrench over on the end. You got to scroll all the way over to number 6, go into the firmware. And then underneath this, it shows you the screen here of what firmware we're running, which is 1.0.4. I'm actually afraid to look. So now let's go download the firmware from Canon's website. So you go to Canon's website, and then it doesn't matter where you go on Canon's website. Here I like this page because this is actually their home for all firmware pages here, and we'll put a link in the comments below. You go to support, software and drivers. You can click through here, but Canon has so many products, it's way easier, and it's a really nice menu. You just type in this, and look at that. They even have all their products that come right up. It's so much simpler just to search for it, and then boom, I'm right where I need to go. Now I'm gonna go to it's detected I'm using a Mac, which is good, that's what I need here. And I go to the firmware page, and the newest is 8. So that means we're 4 versions behind. What we'll try to do is we'll just try to jump from 4 to 8 and see what it does. But we might have to download them individually if it errors out. But if we can just jump, that would be great. Give it a shot. So you have to have a SD card here. So I happen to have one ready to go. Plug that in, because there's no way to really plug your computer in here and do the firmware updates. So now that I've located the firmware I want to download, I just come over here, and I'm on a Mac. So I'm going to click select. And of course I've read these, and I click download. Okay, now that the file is downloaded, let's take a look at it. When we open this zip file, you can see there's a whole bunch of instruction files in these PDFs. There's French, Japanese, here's English. For the C200. Now we scroll down, we make sure you got power. They prefer you to have it plugged in. I don't know if we have the power cord for this anymore, so we will find out if we can run off a battery, which we've already checked the firmware. Now we have to prepare the SD card. So we got an SD card here. Plug that into slot B. You go into the menu, you go over to the settings here, film screen, we can go down to initialize media. and format the SD card. That takes just a second there as we wait for it. There we go. Now that it's been formatted, we can take our card from there, go to our card reader on our computer. So now that the file's been downloaded and I have it here, I drag this over to the Canon memory card. It's very small, goes very fast. We'll just eject that with Command E. Then we can flip that back over here to the camera. And then you go into the menu and you go all the way back over to the wrench and then all the way over to number 6 where you rarely ever go. Very important to update your firmware. Go into camera. Now you can see that this is highlighted where before it was all grayed out. And we can click this, update the firmware 4 to 8. Oh, it's going to let me jump. Here we go. Updating the firmware. Do not disconnect. Now it cut off my screen recording there, so you don't get to see that screen. But all it says is updating the firmware. Do not disconnect. Oh, there you go. Yeah. There we go. Ta-da. Can you see that? I can hear the fan running. This thing's definitely kicked in the high gear. Can you feel it? Do not turn off the power. That is very important. The reason you don't disconnect the power while it's updating its firmware is you're updating its computer brain, because these are small computers, right? And if you turn off the power mid firmware update, you're most likely going to corrupt its brain. And then you're done. You have to send it into Canon for them to resolve that problem. This will only take a few more minutes and then we will be all set. All right, there we go. It's finished. Firmware update to 1.0.8.1. So every time you update a firmware on your camera, it wipes out the settings entirely, which also means your date and time need to be reset. So that's how you update the firmware on the Canon C200. Make sure you like and subscribe so you can see more behind the scenes videos from the M1 Studios team. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you next time.